that. The Science of Mind magazines are available. They're just behind the door here in the corner. Not in here, but in the sanctuary. Thank you again. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Reverend Joanne Boruck. And she has a title talk that says, Have Lunch with God. Now, how is this going to unfold? Welcome to the podium.
Thank you, Beth. You just got to hold it. Whew. Thank you. Wow. It's so good to see everybody, and I really feel the presence here today of God. So, good morning. Good morning, beautiful. Thank you. I'm honored that you chose to spend today at the Center for Spiritual Living. This place of infinite possibilities and unlimited faith. So thank you. And let's take a moment to do an affirmative prayer and set an intention. That is my title today, to have a good intention. And let's set the intention for this morning's message. If you choose, you can close your eyes. And I invite you to relax and release anything that is not harmonious and loving this morning. Just let it go. As your feet are planted firmly on the floor, place your hands on your lap and surrender to the chair. You are supported by our home, Mother Earth. Breathe deeply in and out. And with each breath, allow it to flow up and flow out through your crown, and at the same time, flow down your body and out your feet into the earth. Breathe in life from the earth, and breathe in God consciousness. As I affirm and know, there is only one Spirit, one power, one presence that I call God. And I know that I am of that, created from all that God is. Peace, power, love, light, abundance. I am perfect, whole, and complete. This message today, I know is the right and perfect message for those here in body and in spirit, and all those who claim it as their truth. We are of spirit. And everything heard is delivered and received with love and light. It's all for our greatest and highest good. Life is unfolding in divine right order. With gratitude from the depth of my soul for this truth, this philosophy, this center, I release my word to the law of mind, knowing it is so, and so it is. And let us take a minute now to reflect on our week. Reflect on our friends. And send love to all those who are needing love. And send healing to all those who need healing. And let us bring peace and breathe it right into our heart as we remember God this week. Thank you. What a title I chose. Have Lunch with God. You know, there's a metaphoric story that I'm going to read to you, but it rose from my consciousness after I spent my final days with Gord, because he transitioned from a walker to a wheelchair to a scooter. And one thing remained constant was we had lunch together every Thursday. Lately it was Tuesday and Thursday, and also every Sunday we got to have lunch with Gord. So for me it's twofold. Have lunch with God, for me, was having lunch with Gord. So here's how the story goes originally. There was a little boy, and he decided one morning he wanted to meet God. And he knew it was going to be a long trip to wherever God was, so he packed a suitcase. He put in his suitcase Twinkies and root beer, and he set off on his way. He'd only got about 3 blocks when he noticed an older man sitting on a bench, and he was just feeding the pigeons. So he walked over, and he sat beside him, and he opened his suitcase. And he took out a root beer and started to drink it. And he looked at that older gentleman and he thought, I think that guy looks hungry. So he offered him a Twinkie. Well, when that gentleman ate that Twinkie, he smiled so big that that boy said, I want to see that again. So then he offered him a root beer. Again, that man smiled so big that boy was delighted. And they sat there all afternoon, just having drinks and bites, and they never said a word to each other. And it started to grow dark, and the boy thought he was getting tired, and his mom might be worried, so he better leave. So he walked a few steps, and then he turned around and he ran back and hugged that man. And the man gave him the biggest smile he'd ever seen. So he went home. And when he walked in the house, his mom noticed there was this joy on his face. And she said to him, what did you do today that made you so happy? And he replied, I had lunch with God. But before she could say anything, he said to her, you know what? God has the most beautiful smile I've ever seen. And meanwhile, that elderly gentleman, he went home. And his son said to him, he noticed such a peace around him, and he said, Dad, what did you do today that made you so happy? And he said, I ate Twinkies in the park with God. However, before his son could respond, he says, you know what? He's much younger than I expected. You know, too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, a compliment, or the smallest act of caring, which has the potential to turn a life around. People come into our lives all the time. Some people come for a reason, some for a season, some for a lifetime. And it's up to us to embrace it all equally. Ernest Holmes, in The Science of Mind, he says, believe that we are one with God. You know, he studied many different faiths and doctrines, and through his dedication and publications, we use that daily to bring peace and perfection. God created that for us to discover. You know, I like to look at the Bible, the Science of Mind text, to see how they relate to seeing God in the world. And I was thinking about what our philosophy is. And I talk to people, and, you know, they say, what kind of center do you go to? So I tell them, they usually say, what church do you belong to? So I tell them, and sometimes they say, oh, I'm a practicing Anglican. I'm a practicing Catholic. Even atheists say, I'm a practicing atheist. Well, you know, that got me thinking. Well, if you're still practicing, why don't you come to the Center for Spiritual Living? Because this new thought, we're not here to practice. We're here to experience life because we're co-creators. We're living our belief every day in every way. And once you choose to be conscious and aware of that, then you too can have lunch with God. That's what lunch with God means to me. The experience, my experience with God was so joyful and so unexpected. The things that come out of his mouth, I know of many of you talk to him. And some of the things that come out of his mouth were pretty crazy. So lunch with God. And let's just start with that part, that notion about just seeing God. You know, one of the many books is the Bible. And one of them talks about the life of Jesus. And it states that Mary Magdalene first saw Jesus as a gardener. And of course, because the first time she saw him was in the garden. However, when she looked at him, when she really, really looked at his eyes, she said, I have seen the Lord. Yes, God comes to us in disguise. But how often do we recognize it? How often do we say, I've seen God? God bless the internet. Because I looked in, I put in a note, I said, how many times do they mention seeing God in the Bible? And you know, it's mentioned 41 times. Either I see God or I am an expression of God. It's in Genesis chapter 2, Matthew chapter 5, Corinthians chapters 1 and 3. Even Ernest Holmes, in The Science of Mind, page 106, he says, if we realize that man is the spiritual likeness of God, we shall see the whole scheme of life. So what is the importance of having lunch with God? Well, it's only important if you want peace and harmony. Otherwise, you don't have to. To have lunch with God opens us up to forgiveness and healing. And that's why it's so important that we have fellowship we call after. Really, it's about healing and it's about being together, and having lunch with each of you has taken on a tremendous new meaning for me. So sign me up. I have a date to have lunch with God every Sunday. So if we were to put this practice into our life every day, I thought, how could we do that? Well, the first thing that happened in that story is that boy had intention. He got up that morning and he said, I'm going to meet God. And now I might be reading between the lines here, but I'm pretty sure he did it first thing in the morning. He got out of bed, and he decided he was going to meet God. So I think that's when we should do that, is in the morning. Set your intention, because there's a risk involved if you don't. If you don't declare what your intention is, I declare you, the universe will set one for you. Like you get out of bed and stub your toe. Now, if you're going to focus on that stubbed toe, you're going to go through life that whole day running into stuff. And I know it's happened to me, so it's probably happened to you. And by the end of the day, you've just had a carbon copy of how it was when you get out of bed. So we can turn that around now. Or maybe you get up and you're just busy because you're still working, got to do your hair, make a lunch, have a coffee, have a shower. I challenge you, maybe set your alarm for 5 minutes earlier so you can get up and set an intention. And it can be something as little like, this is an amazing day. And I enter into it with excitement, wondering, what's next? What's unfolding for me today? And I'm going to be grateful for whatever it is. I accept and acknowledge it and release it and let it go. It doesn't have to be long. It just has to be sincere and with intention. You could even use that intention that boy did. I'm going to meet God today. And if you do, I want to hear about it. I bet you we could write a book. So when he decided to go meet God, he was so positive that he was going to meet him. There was never any doubt. And, you know, being positive, it's easy for me to talk about because it always really kind of came easy to me. I remember my mom said to me once, Joanne, you could make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. And it took me a long time. Like I was about 10 when she said that to me. And I think I was about 17 before I really realized what that meant. It wasn't literal. And when I was 10, it was really easy to make silk purses because my mom was the one doing all the worrying. But when I turned 17, it was a little different. So that was number one. Took me a long time because I think it's really important to set your intention first thing in the morning. And I guarantee it will improve your spiritual life. And for some people that are still working, it improves your professional life and your personal life. Because everything's connected. Where you go and what you do, it's all one. Do you know, when I was looking up to see setting intentions for the day, you know, Revlon, every day when they start their day, they said they're selling hope. We're selling hope, not cosmetics. Isn't that funny? I didn't see what kind of hope they were selling. But it's obviously been successful because they focused on the result, on the experience, not on what they were selling. So that's another key to making an intention. Once you make it, focus on the result. How's that going to show up in your life? And if what you want to achieve is peace and joy, then you better not be in the business of complaining and judging. Because we're constantly selling who we are and what we are. But the final result is an expression of who we are. So that boy in the story, he packed his suitcase with Twinkies and root beer. And for him, that's what he needed to have a successful day. That was his comfort food. He packed what he wanted. And he also packed an open mind. Comfort food and an open mind. I think that's a message for us too. We need to pack comfort words when we set about our day. Fill our lunch kit with God, love, hope, peace, prosperity, gratitude. And will setting intentions in the morning and filling your lunch kit with God qualities help you be your authentic self? Absolutely. Or sometimes you get up and you're just drained and you leave with your lunchbox empty. Oh, don't do that anymore. And don't pack Brussels sprouts. Lots of people don't like Brussels sprouts. But you can never go wrong with food. If you bring a bag of food wherever you go, you can never go wrong. And I was thinking about food myself, you know. When I was living in Fort McMurray, I was 19, and I had my son with me, and he was 3. And that's a whole nother talk. But my house was always full of people coming and going from breakfast till 2 in the morning. I lived with these 2 girls that worked in the bar at night, so they babysat in the day, and I worked in the day. And so sometimes after the bar was closed, they came, and much later in life, I realized it wasn't me, it was the food. Because I was a mom. So there was always cookies at Joanne's house. There was always milk in the fridge. However, I have to believe that they came back because of who and what I was, not just what I had in that big lunch kit we call a fridge. So set your intention, pack your lunchbox, and then he just closed the door and walked out. He released it. That's another thing sometimes we forget about. We set an intention, and then right away we start putting limitations on it. Oh, well, I'm going to have a peaceful day. Oh, but I'll only be peaceful if my kids come home and do their homework. Or if my husband comes home on time for supper. Or if, I get gas. So the minute you start defining what that means to you, you've negated it. How your day is going to turn out is none of your business. It's God's business. And if you have a clear intention, God only wants what's for your greatest and highest good. And no one knows that better than Creator. So set your attention and know it's being created in divine right ways. Randy Travis's song, I talk about a lot. Some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers. That really was the silk purse that took me years to understand. So set your intention, pack your lunch kit, let go and let God. Start out each day with no expectation and just be open to the greater good. And you'll recognize it because recognition is when you can accept what's unfolding in your life. recognition, seeing God in someone, is when you can let go of who they are, if they're tall or short or skinny or fat or black and white or blue. If you can see their essence, their eyes. I often think about a bag. You go to the grocery store and there's all these apples, yellow, green, red, pink. They're all the same. Once you take the peeling off, you put those on the shelf, nobody's going to know. So, do you recognize God? Or will you be too busy to see the gift? I invite you to start every day with an intention, with no expectation, only the end result. And then there was another message that was really important in there. They didn't say a word to each other. You know, if you have somebody that you can talk to, you have a great life and you're very fortunate. But if you have someone that you don't have to talk to, that you can be in silence with, then you're blessed. So the final step that boy took was to share what was in his lunch kit, because you always get back what you give. What I give, I don't always get it back from the people or the children. I think I should. But I get it back in so many other ways. So he exchanged his Twinkie and his root beer for a smile. What you get is never in the same proportion as what you give. It's always more. It's always more. I remember Reverend Doug said, if you give without expectation of return, that's a gift. But if you give with the expectation of getting something for it, that's not giving, that's trading. So do you want to be a giver or a trader? I want to be a giver, and I'm pretty good at it. So let people know how important they are when you're having lunch with them. Because we have the freedom to choose to enjoy the lunch, to think I hardly have time for that lunch. Gord said in his affirmation that I played at his service, good and God are synonymous. And so it is. I am Reverend Joanne Faith, Peace and Love Boruck, and I'd like to invite you to join me in a song for our closing treatment by Karen Drucker. I'll tell you about it because it's got actions, and I'd love it if you stood. So it starts off, you are the face of God. And open your arms, I hold you in my heart. And then open your palms, you are my family. And once again, you are the face of God. And we'll sing it 2 times. Maybe I'll leave it on. I'll sing quiet. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are my family. You are the face of God. Now you face this way and you face this way. No, face each other. Yay. No, Beth, you're turning the wrong way. Everybody look this way. You guys look this way. And you guys all look that way. I know. There is God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are my family. You are the face of God. And now if you just sit for a moment, I was just decided that I'm going to play this closing treatment that Gord spoke. Now stop for a minute and just tell you that Gord and I talked about many, many deep things in our lunches. And I used to record everything he said, have them on my little computer at home. And one day I was feeling pretty bereft, and I said, can you do a treatment for me, Gord? And so he started to talk, and I started the treatment, and he finished it. So I'm hoping it comes out. Let's see how it goes. There is only love and there is only light. And in this place of knowing the divine truth of our inheritance, that we inherit the kingdom, that we walk this path with each other, holding hands, whether it's through the veil or in person, and that love never dies. People do. I allow Gord to open his consciousness and speak these words of opening affirmation.
I give great thanks today because I know God and good are synonymous. As I am surrounded with so much God right here, right now, only good comes my way in this day, every day. And my thoughts to you are God fills your day. And I am so pleased to see all the good comes your way. And so it is.
And so it is. And so it is. Thank you. Peace and love to everybody here in body, mind, and spirit. And now I'd like to ask whoever was doing